Okay, so short video disclaimer before the video begins. Part 2 and 3 are part of the same video. In part 2 we look at sketching the torso, and then in part 3 we look at sketching the back and applying more organic shapes to the anatomy of the torso. Cool, so let's get into the video. Hi, welcome back to another episode. So in this episode we're going to be looking at drawing the chest and the back. I feel like these two things are actually easier to draw, and maybe we'll also look at connecting that to the arms as well. So we're going to be looking at doing a more structural approach where we'll approach it with more 3D like forms, thinking about boxes and cylinders, and then we'll move on to a more fluid and dynamic approach, thinking about how we can take these more structural forms and make them more organic. Yeah, so let's get into it. So first thing before we start, a really good thing for you guys to learn is just the spherical kind of shape and like the box like kind of shape. This kind of shape here, where it's a bit like an egg. So you want to imagine it as like a 3D object. If it helps, something that can help is just to draw contour lines. Like, you'll be using this kind of shape a lot, and it's to represent the rib cage and the shape of the chest. And then something really helpful is just to get used to drawing boxes in perspective like this, like that. So you've got the box like shape, and then we've also got cylinders as well, like this. And these shapes here can help you in drawing the body. So first thing we're going to look at is the pectoralis major muscle, and we're going to look at its kind of shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw that egg-like shape. Then all you're going to do is you're going to draw a line across it, roughly maybe halfway. That's the kind of shape we're going to draw. We're going to draw a line across it. What I want you to think about for the shape is a fish. Kind of like this. You see how it makes like a fish kind of shape? So that's technically what we're going to do here. So this is what's going to sit on top of this. So we're just going to split this down the middle. This is going to represent the middle part of the rib cage, then where that rib cage ends. And all we're going to do, this is going to change depending on whether it's a man or a woman. So we'll start off with a more male profile. So you see how we wrap it around the form, and then we make that kind of box-like shape coming to a pinch right here where the arm starts to join. Some other things you can draw the clavicle bone. Maybe the best way to think about this is like bike handlebars. So clavicle bone, We can just draw where the arm is with a cylinder like this. From the end of where that rib cage is, we're gonna just draw two diagonal lines, and this just represent where the rib cage is. So that's where the rib cage stops, that's where it becomes open, and this is the rib cage folding over. So that's our first muscle here, the pectoralis major. If we get a more feminine form, then all that changes is the fish kind of shape. So imagine that fish shape now has like a balloon coming off the bottom. This is what changes when you get a more feminine form. And so to make that change, let's draw this again. Drawing that egg-like shape, curving across halfway. We can kind of simulate the same sort of thing we did for that male-like form. And now what we're gonna have to remember is we're also gonna have the balloons. And so what I'm gonna do here is just draw the balloons, or two water balloons like attached to that shape there. And we can draw that line coming down the middle. We can draw where it ends. We can draw this wrapping around the form. We can draw our cylinders in. But hopefully you can see from that how the shape has kind of changed. So if we want to turn this shape in space, because we're going to now rotate as we come over here, all we're going to do, we're going to take that same spherical like shape, we can draw that handlebar-like shape to represent the clavicle bone. And we're going to come roughly down to halfway. Going to draw where the ribcage ends. And you can see we've got our pectoralis major right here. This is a more male shape. Right here, like this is where the nipple is, that's the middle, or the middle of the rib cage, and then it's gonna curve off like this. We can draw a cylinder for where the arm would be. But as you raise the arm, the shape's going to change. So same thing again, that circular like shape. Gonna draw across the middle. I guess think of this as like an elongated fish. So that sums up the pectoralis major muscle, and depending on whether it's female or male, it's going to change shape, but not by too much. Okay, second thing we're going to look at, the deltoid. Deltoid is also going to be seen from the front, so just imagine that shield-like shape is going to be on the arms too as well. And so it's going to put some meat on the bones. Imagine the dragon claw or a shield. To give you a visual representation, I'm just going to draw something out quickly. And while I draw this out, I'll actually show you something that's really important. When you're drawing, if you could think about the line of action. When I say line of action or line of motion, it's kind of like an S curve that goes throughout the pose. If you have S curves and C curves, you'll find a more dynamic way to draw it, and it will feel more lifelike. So I'm drawing the S curve first. I'm drawing roughly where the head is, roughly where the body is. And then just gonna sketch this out. As it comes down, we get the sternocleidomastoid. But this isn't as much to show the neck muscles because we'll cover that when it comes to the face, but I do kind of want to show this because it shows the deltoid, the trapezius, and it shows the pectoralis major muscles, so it kind of covers what we've looked at so far in terms of the front. So just going to do the clavicle bone here. Well, think of it as like a handlebar. Now I'm thinking about the shape of the body, and you can see I'm using a curved line to make it feel more 3D. Gonna draw across the body again. And this is going to be the shape for that pectoralis major muscle. Okay, I'll just do this. Kind of like that. But yeah, you get a visual representation of deltoid, pectoralis major, trapezius, and the sternocleidomastoid. Coming down on the neck, you get the sternocleidomastoid here. Coming to the side, you've got the trapezius either side. The deltoid, our shield-like shape. Clavicle bone, think of handlebars. And then you've got the pectoralis major either side of these handlebars, I guess. So we're going to look at what comes underneath the pectoralis major. And that's going to be the abdominals. You can think about abdominals kind of like stretchy tongue. If it's a female shape, then you're going to get this kind of shape here. Think of it kind of like a loose arrow. Female, and if it's a male shape, then you're gonna get less alterations or changes. It's just going to be fairly straight. So in terms of looking at where the abdominals go, if we take that same sort of shape to represent the rib cage, we can have this shape to represent the pelvis. I'm going to draw that opening here that represents where the rib cage opens up. Can draw down the middle, can draw those handlebars, and quite quickly we've got like our rib cage down. And now we're gonna do like a male one for this one, and we can do a female one for the other one. So we're gonna do a male one. So let's just open up the pelvis. So let's do our abdominals. You can see how we're drawing that straight line. We're just gonna do a line down the middle, and then all we're gonna do, imagine first two lines are pointing upwards, and then the last line's kind of straight. So we're just gonna point this upwards, kind of like an arrow pointing upwards. That's what we're sketching here. 1, 2, 2 arrows pointing upwards, and then the last one is more straight. So yeah, that's our abdominals. Oh, that's like male abdominals. And then let's draw a female one, and this time all we're gonna do is we're gonna follow that kind of shape, but we're gonna do an S curve. On either side. Can draw those handlebars in again, and then we can draw yeah, like the abs. Yeah, male, female. And imagine this thing can stretch and squish, and so depending on where the rib cage is and the pelvis is and the twisting that's happening, you're gonna get different variations in how it looks. So you can see how the twisting motion changes how the abdominals are shaped. Let's move on to the next shape, and I'm gonna put all of this together so that it's understandable, but right now we're just tackling the shapes one by one. Obliques. So if the pectoralis major goes here and the abdominals go here, the obliques are the thing that's either side of your abdominals. So for obliques, we're gonna show it like this. So if you draw one box in space like this, then go underneath that and draw a second box in space like this. Now imagine that there's like two elastic bands that are being stretched across these two. That's what the obliques are. So I'm just gonna outline the outside of this, and we're just gonna come up. And think about it like this: one side is going to be more straight than the other, and the other side is going to have more curves. And the side that's going to have more curves the area in which someone's bending. And so here in this scenario, this would represent our obliques. Same thing again. Two boxes. You can draw the S-curve through, which helps thinking of it as like a dynamic and fluid form. And then either side, we're just going to do the obliques. And so here and here are where our obliques are. The last thing that you'll see is the serratus anterior. Imagine that this shape comes either side of either side and kind of like underneath where the pectoralis major muscle is. Gonna draw that circular like shape again. Gonna open it up to show a rib cage. Gonna do that circular shape here to represent where the neck would be. Where that middle line is, we're just gonna draw a middle part to represent the middle part of the rib cage. And then handlebars again. And so the serratus anterior is going to be a shape that comes along the side of this rib cage. So essentially what we can do is we can draw like a curved line and then just add ridges to that curved line. Like that. And all I'm gonna do is draw two lines that intersect, kind of in like a spiral-like motion coming down. And so that's our serratus anterior right there. And then let's look at a side view. You remember that circular, well, that curve shape? And all we're doing is we're just pronouncing that curve shape. Like that. That's our serratus anterior. And then from the back angle, I'm gonna draw the same kind of circular like shape. Here we're just drawing that spine. And then if you remember when we were looking at the arms, one of those key things when it came to the arms were the shoulder blades. So we do those shoulder blades. We can do this to represent where the bone is. And then the serratus anterior is just going to be like this curve here, and then just ridge it out like this. Essentially just put a few lumps in and do some double lines like that. That's how much you're going to see of the serratus anterior from the back. And so yeah, let's try and put all of that together, all the front stuff together. I genuinely recommend just sketching along with me. And don't worry, because we'll actually move on to how to make this look more organic or more dynamic. But these are the building blocks. Yeah, so we'll just do it here. Same again. You can actually do one circular shape here. Second circular shape here. And again, draw that halfway point. It's just going to represent the pectoralis major. We're going to be drawing a male shape. Or, you know, instead of a fish, you can imagine like a stretched out t-shirt. Drawing the middle line. And then here to the side, this shape here represents the serratus anterior. And then this shape here is going to represent the serratus anterior here and here. So we're going to do the abdominals first. So for abdominals, let's just take that tongue-like shape. Kind of like that. And then for our obliques, think about it like an hourglass, where if it's a female, then the hips are going to be wider, and if it's a male, think about it like an hourglass, where if it's a female, then the hips are going to be wider, and if it's a male, then your torso is going to be wider. Torso meaning upper body. So because it's a male, we want our torso to be wider, so I'm just going to shrink this in a bit. But yeah, that represents where the obliques are. You can see I've got my pelvis in the wrong place. Can make the serratus anterior wider, and then yeah. So we can even label this, but this gives you like the idea of what it would look like, where we've got pectoralis major, we've got our obliques, abs or abdominals, serratus anterior, and then yeah, you can do your deltoids if you want that kind of shield-like shape.